Hello and welcome back to The English Writer, unless it's your first time here, in which case, hello, welcome. I'm Andy, and in this final video in the Poor Girl Marries Prince series, I'm going to look at the basics of punctuation and orthography in English, or the how to use commas, periods, colons, capital letters, small letters, etc., etc. video. So if you're having a few problems with these, please stick around. First, let's look at the original story with all the punctuation and correct orthography. Normal, right? Nice and easy to read. But do you need to learn that? How strict can it be? And do you really need to understand it properly? Well, yes and no, I suppose. I can say from experience, some languages have much more casual rules than English. Japanese, for example. And so those learners struggle to get these basics. But it's really worth doing because bad punctuation and the wrong orthography can really confuse readers. Really. Well, to show you an extreme, here's what that same text looks like without the boring old punctuation and orthography of English. Right? A bit different, isn't it? First of all, it looks a lot shorter. But that's not such a great thing when that means it's just a long line of words stuck together with no obvious structure or rhythm. In fact, that raises two key points. Without the orthographic bits, like capital letters, we wouldn't know when a sentence starts, what is a proper name, or when something is being emphasized. That is made clearer. And punctuation helps us know when to pause or stop, when something is a question or someone is speaking. All of this stuff is really, really, really helpful. Maybe you can read this without all that. In fact, let's see if I can read that text without the punctuation. Let's go. A poor girl from Paris has married the Prince. Cinderella met the royal young at last month's big ball event at the palace. The surprise wedding was the result of a long search by the prince's father to find a suitable wife for his bachelor son, and has now made the teenage servant girl the talk of the town. I'm just so happy to be with someone so wonderful, Cinderella said. I had no idea he was the prince when I met him. He just seemed like a really charming man He just seemed like a really charming man until last month. Cinderella was an unknown girl working as a cleaner for her stepmother and two older sisters. So although she came from a successful merchant family, Cinderella lived a life of poverty, and she was prevented from attending the royal dance at the palace. However, it was now known that the former scullery maid was able to go to the party after she was helped by her very grandmother. The witch used her magic to provide the team with clothes, a carriage, and servants to attend the lavish event, although her identity had to be due to time restrictions on the spell. Cinderella left the ball in a hurry, leaving behind one of her glass slippers and a smitten prince. It was the unusual footwear that allowed the future king to launch a successful citywide search to find the mysterious guest. As I just knew she was the woman for me, the prince said. I couldn't marry anyone else. The only words I said to be making plans for a honeymoon tour following the world of romance. Too much. And I'm so used to reading and speaking English that I simply want to add my own rhythm, which is bad, really bad. But it's because it leads to misreading and can change the meaning, like this. He just seemed like a really charming man until last month. Nah, until last month? So now he's not charming? You see, change the meaning. That's not what the writer or Cinderella meant. Or is it? But who knows without some punctuation helping us? So let's add some. Before I do that, I'm going to take that text and put it into a Pages document so I can edit it more easily. Here's the unpunctuated version again, a block of words with no clear structure, but I will give it some. First, let's start with capital letters, all big letters. for proper names, such as places and people. Paris and Cinderella. And that's it. Not too many in this text. But we also need to capitalize the word I, because I, when I mean me, I, is always a big letter. Always. And you can see they appear in the quotations, which will help us later with other punctuation marks. We also use capital letters for starting sentences. And if we're starting sentences, we should also end them with the periods, also called full stops. As we start a sentence with a proper noun, the word Cinderella, we already have our capital letter, so there's no change, as with the I's we did. Although we have a choice here, period or a comma, because it's a conjunction, we don't because there is another clause. Cinderella lived a life of poverty. After this, we can look at those commas. There are many rules for these, anything from 6 to 20 or more, depending on who you ask. So we can't cover them all here, so I'll explain those in the text as we go along and why the writer uses them. The first one is actually a pair of commas. Cinderella, open commas, 18, close commas. Because 18 is an extra piece of information that the writer adds but can easily cut out without damaging the sentence, Cinderella met the young royal. The next comma is because it's going to be part of a quotation, meaning something someone says. In this case, Cinderella said. You can see it's also odd because no comma makes this wonderful Cinderella, which is not the writer's intention. So later we will return here to complete the punctuation to make this a clear quotation. The next comma comes after the adverbial phrase that starts this sentence, which in this case is a time expression, until last month. Note again we can delete this part and the sentence is still complete with a subject, main verb and complement. We do this a lot in English. For example, yesterday I went to work. A long time ago, there was a princess. Last week I met Jack Black. The next comma is used to separate two clauses joined by a conjunction, although. Note the subordinate or dependent clause, which begins with although, is incomplete without the main clause, which is a complete sentence. We can actually reverse these two clauses and the meaning remains. However is another adverb, so as before with until last month, we separate with a comma. So remember, adverbs. The next comma is one of the easier ones. It's a list, and we separate items in a list with commas. In this case, clothes, a carriage, and servants. Although we don't need to put a comma before servants because the and shows this is the final item in that list. I will tell you now, some writers would put a comma before the and to make it even cleaner. And it's a choice the writer can make. You can make. Our next comma is similar to our previous one. Remember that although bit earlier. Well, here we are again. Another although, which is another conjunction, which allows us to put another comma in there for clarity. This time the although clause, or the dependent clause, comes after the main clause, but it's still the same piece of grammar as before. Our next commas come in the next sentence. The first follows another adverbial phrase, this one for reason. The why that explains the sentence. Think of it like this. Why did Cinderella leave the ball in a hurry? Answer, it was due to time restrictions. The second comma here is used because that final clause, leaving behind one of her glass slippers, is additional information and not part of the main sentence. Remove it and the sentence is still correct. We do this a lot in English, that is, add additional information between commas. Here we don't need a second comma because it's the end of the sentence already. The final comma in the story comes after another quotation and before the prince said. We did this earlier up here, so I won't repeat the explanation. But this is a perfect time to finish those quotations with the correct punctuation. We call these quotation marks or speech marks, and they go either side of something someone said, meaning the speaker's exact words. You can use either double, as I did, or single, but you need to be consistent, and that is, use only one style. Different places have different rules for which one, but it really is a style thing whether you use single or double. And note we have opening speech marks and closing speech marks, and they look like 66 and 99. The closing one, the 99, always comes after that comma. Also notice the writer doesn't need to write Cinderella said again because it's clear she is still talking. I'm just so happy to be with someone so wonderful, Cinderella said. I had no idea he was the prince when I met him. He just seemed like a really charming man. That I shows us this is still her. It's the same down here with other quotes. I just knew she was the woman for me, the prince said. I couldn't marry anyone else. The final little bits of punctuation include apostrophes, those little single speech marks that show possession or abbreviation. So the first one is months, because the big bull belongs to last month. That is, last month modifies or provides extra information for big bull. We could also say the big bull of last month. Here's another, the prince's father, or we could say the father of the prince. The next apostrophe is for an abbreviation, that is a short form of a phrase. In this case, I am becomes I'm, dropping the for am. And please note, we don't do this in formal writing, essays and official documents, for example, but this is a quotation, so it's okay. Here's another could not. Notice the apostrophe replaces the letter we cut. A couple of bits of punctuation to tidy this up. A hyphen here is the writer's choice. You could just have two separate words, but the writer wanted to make the relationship between servant and girl clearer. And again, writer's choice, single speech marks to highlight the words big bull. Perhaps it's not the official name of the event, but the writer is trying to tell us that it is that is how it is viewed or discussed. I won't say more on this, but speech marks have various optional uses in writing, which you can pick up as you get more skilled. Finally, I might make this a little easier to read by making paragraphs. A paragraph usually deals with one main idea, one topic, one event, or one stage, etc. When the idea changes, the paragraph changes. We won't go into this in depth here either, and you do not need to stress too much about it. Just make it look nice, eh? And that is it. Most, but not all, punctuation marks were covered in this story. And after this group, you only really need to think about question marks, exclamation marks, which are far too overused these days thanks to the texting culture, and colons. With that set, you're probably set. Yeah, I think you can live without the dashes and the semicolon unless you write a lot. And the ampersand is really a waste of your time, in my opinion. This is the end of the Poor Girl Marries Prince series, in fact. There is a worksheet for this video that I will be posting. You can find it in a link in the descriptions below. And if you're still here, thanks and well done for sticking around. And please hit that subscribe button below. It really helps me a lot. And I hope to be putting up more videos around news and other stories in the near future, so please look out for those. And if there is any particular piece of English you would like me to discuss in a video, please let me know. Until then, bye for now.